1, 2, 3.
Clap.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Entrepreneur Life Podcast, your go-to podcast for all things entrepreneurship, accounting, and lifestyle. Today, I have with me DJ Francis Darko in the house. Francis is the short-term rental entrepreneur and the owner of YourKChost, a short-term rental company with the mission of providing cozy and comfortable stays in Kansas City. Francis also spends his time sharing his Airbnb journey and how others can get started through the 123 BNB program.
That's
Let's go.
correct.
I love it. And you and I just met. Like, we're like new friends.
It's crazy how like that happens when people are aligned.
Yeah.
When like visions are aligned or just energies are aligned or beliefs are aligned. When there's something that clicks, it's easy for stuff to just move forward.
Right.
So we literally just met at dinner.
Yeah.
And you were like, yeah, I have a podcast. I'm like, oh, actually, I'm looking to do a couple podcasts.
Let's go.
Next thing you know, I'm on here. Literally
And
like 5 days ago.
Wow, I actually think you're cool. Oh. I guess I'll let you come on my podcast.
Thanks. I was bullied in high school, so that really means a lot to me.
So why don't you tell the people who you are, where you're from, all the things?
Absolutely. So I'm new to Miami, actually. Like she said, my name is Francis. And I grew up in Kansas City. My family is originally from Ghana, Africa, and they immigrated to the U.S. when we were 7 years old. When I was 7 years old, sorry. Yeah, I know. So son of an immigrant. Grew up in KC, moved around the States a little bit, with my father's work, but ended up setting some roots down in KC for college and then after college. And that's where I started my professional career and then started my B&B business in 2019. So I am new to the Miami area, loving it though.
Yeah, what's
Miami's,
not to love?
I know. The sun here is like, it's therapeutic. That's one of the reasons I moved here is because the sun feels so good when you walk out every morning. I mean, I preach do a good morning routine, and mine is definitely go outside with my pup and catch some sun every morning. So, yeah.
They call it paradise under construction.
I actually haven't heard that before, but that is so accurate.
It's so on point. Everything's always... I mean, we just had to tell them to quit doing construction outside my door so we could film this episode.
Yeah, we've actually had quite a few obstacles in filming this episode. So all that stuff I just said about alignment, maybe, but here we are. We made it.
That's how you know that, anytime there's warfare on your project, that it's going to be fire.
Yeah, right.
So.
And what did I say the definition of an entrepreneur is, or at least my definition?
Yeah.
Someone who can solve problems.
Yes.
You got a vision, problems happen, and then you solve them along the way. That's literally all we do. So.
Exactly.
Here we are. Yeah.
So what's your journey been like going from, where you started in hospitality to now being an entrepreneur and having this Airbnb business?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I guess I'll start with the beginning of my professional journey in general. And that was, I graduated from college in 2015. And then I got my first job. We were talking a little bit yesterday about how everybody gets that first rigorous sales job right out of college where it's like 100% commission. Yeah. There's no perks. It's like, it's just grind.
If you don't do direct sales, I feel like you're not going to be a good entrepreneur.
I mean, it's true.
It's such a benefit.
You have to sell.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurship is about selling.
Yeah.
So the first thing that I learned from selling insurance was how to sell. Everything from like being personable, asking the right questions, things like, like your numbers behind the sales process. So we had this thing called 10-3-1. And that was for every 10 people you talk to on the phone, 3 of them will meet with you and 1 of them will end up being a client.
Yeah, we had a similar.
Yeah. But like, that's just how the world works. The numbers translate. You have to know if you're an entrepreneur, like what your ratios are before you can have some success. So you know what you're going for, right? So definitely learned that how to sell, how to do my numbers. And I also learned that everything was my fault from insurance. It's like they don't take any excuses. If your calendar is empty, it's your fault. I'm like, I don't have anybody to call. They're like, figure it out. I'm like, okay. So like, that's also necessary because like, it is your fault. Whenever you have a business, it's your baby. If you don't do it, then nobody will.
Nobody will.
No, literally, no, it won't happen. So that's where I started my professional career. And then after that, I jumped into hospitality, which is what I actually went to school for, right? Hotel admin. I worked for the Convention and Visitors Bureau in KC. And our job was just to get conferences and conventions to come to Kansas City. So any national podcast association, right? Anyone could get a call from me and try to get them to come to Kansas City.
The Autumn Leaves organization.
Yeah, that's right. I was telling you, one of the groups that I called on was the Autumn Leaves Collectors Association, and their mission was to collect rare autumn leaves and get together once a year and talk about how rare their autumn leaves are or what collection.
I love it. If you're into that, we're here for it.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like in the U.S., there is an association organization for literally anything, right? So. Yeah, so that was my job for about 3 years, and I loved it. It was a great gig, like great experience. Like the hours were good. It was a 9 to 5, but it wasn't like too stressful. It was sales, so I got to work with people. But there came a point, and this is where like my entrepreneur side kicked in. I'd already been DJing on the side just to make some extra money, but this is where my entrepreneur side kicked in. There came a point where I saw my sales VP get fired. And around that same time, or I guess our company hired a new CEO. And then I saw my sales VP get fired for no reason other than he wanted to get somebody else in.
Other than corporate America.
Right? And it makes sense. He came in, he wanted his own guy there. She didn't do anything wrong. We had hit our sales goals. We had been doing well as an organization, but it was just time for him to bring his own guy in. So she got fired, and that just kind of jarred me in a way. I don't know why that particular firing affected me. Maybe it's because I had a good relationship with her. Yeah. But it just kind of made me think like, wow, I guess, in this corporate America game, really anything can happen. Yeah. Right. And so that kind of set me off. And then after that, I'd hit my second quarter sales goal, and I'd been busting my butt. We got all the sales, everything was good, hit the goal. And then I came in the next day and there was just as many emails, just as many calls to make, just as much work to do.
The hamster wheel was still going.
Exactly. And I think a lot of us have like that like moment where you realize that, well, I could either keep putting all this work in for someone else, or I could kind of put it towards something that I like to do or will build for me. Right. So. I
remember my moment of that exact. It's like, it kind of burns into your brain.
Yeah. It's. I think it's just part of the journey of an entrepreneur. I think you need that something to fuel you out of whatever you were doing prior. So, yeah, I felt that, and from that moment, I was just kind of like treading water. Like I wasn't really trying, and I wasn't not trying, but like I couldn't quit, but I didn't want to get fired. So after about four months of that, they were like, dude, you're not doing anything. Like you gotta go. Like, bro, we've had enough of you gotta get out of here.
What do they call that? Quiet quitting? Silent quitting?
Yeah.
You're like, I'm still here, but I'm not.
Yeah, exactly. I've heard that trend last year, right? Yeah. So that's what happened, and that's what launched me into the B&B, right? And I think like at core, it's something that it's just like one of those things that just lined up perfectly. Like when I was in high school, I thought I wanted to own a hotel. I was like, sometime down the line, I would like to own a hotel. I'd like to be in the hotel business and be like a top level exec, something like that, right? And then here I am, down the road, and I effectively have a hotel. Yeah. Like, right? So.
Because you have a lot of Airbnbs.
Yeah.
How many do you have?
29.
Wow.
29, yeah. So, that was that fall, 2019. That's when this started. Is a friend of mine just mentioned the idea. She was just like, hey, have you heard of this Airbnb arbitrage opportunity? And I was like, well, I haven't, but let me look into it. YouTube University. I was like
Google and YouTube. So
exactly. Yeah. Everyone gets their degrees from Google and YouTube now, which really is all you need.
Yeah.
So yeah, YouTube University, read every article I could about it. And I figured out like, I think I could do this.
Yeah. For people who don't know what arbitrage is, what is that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Airbnb arbitrage, really arbitrage in general, is just you buy something at one price, repackage it, and sell it at another price. Same thing goes for your Airbnbs, right? This is one way that I figured out how to get into the Airbnb business without having to buy property. Okay. And so what you do is you rent apartments from a landlord who is cooperative, and you, instead of living there, you Airbnb that apartment.
With legal permission.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
I would encourage you to look at the city ordinances, building ordinances.
Absolutely.
Also, right?
Yeah. So first off, you're not going to get away with it. Okay. So it's not, if you try to like tell him you're living there and then you don't live there, you're not going to get away with it. Your neighbors are going to sell you out. Some days, God forbid, someone's going to throw a party or something. You're going to get found out. Like, so it's not something that you can do under the table, but it is something that is very beneficial for landlords if they'll hear you out. Okay. Because if you think about it, as a professional host, I'm the perfect tenant. I have to spotlessly clean my place after every guest. That means that even if a cabinet handle breaks or something, we have to fix it before the next guest checks in. So the apartments are consistently kept in immaculate condition. There's no like wear and tear from someone just living in there and not caring about the place, right? So there's one advantage. The second advantage is that as a landlord, you want someone who's going to stay there, not someone who gets a new job and they have to move across the city, or, you know, maybe they get into a relationship and they need to move in with their significant other or whatever, right? If I'm making money as a business, I could literally rent your place for 10 years.
Wow. So
I could never have to leave.
Yeah.
As long as, you know, things are going okay.
Yeah.
So, you know, we also do things like we'll negotiate 2-3 year leases. We'll be able to rent in multiple places if
like in one building.
Okay. Right. So if you're a landlord, you have a 5-unit apartment complex. I can come and say, hey, we'll rent 3 of them. You know, give us whatever discount on the rent, and we'll do a 2-year lease with 3 apartments. That sounds pretty good from to a landlord, right?
And it's a good way to, like, if you're trying to do this and you want to get them on board, like, these are your selling points.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
Like, you need to show up with, like, not how is this good for me? 101 of sales, how is this good for you?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you would ask the landlord their pain points, things like that. Okay. But yeah, that's the basic model of it. You rent an apartment, Airbnb, and then you profit off the difference. And that's really where people have a lot of questions. Well, are you really making, you know, any money? Like, how are you making any, if your apartment is $2,000 a month, like, how are you making any money? And if you think about it, like, apartment, let's say it's $1,600 a month, right? Your 1-bedroom apartment in like the Midwest, not here in Miami, because that's like,
where are you gonna find?
I'm literally,
where are you gonna find that here?
I'm not doing it here because the apartment rates are so high that it's crushing the margin.
Yeah.
I have some colleagues that are doing it here, and it's just it's too risky.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that you do is you do research to figure out which places work, which places don't, right? So let's say you're in somewhere in the Midwest, in Chicago or something. You have a $1,600 1-bedroom apartment. Technically, every day you're paying $53 a day for that. Technically, right? So if you think about it, like, your cheapest motel is going to be more than $53 a day, right? So that's where the margin comes into play. That's where the money comes into play. You can charge more per night than your rent rate is per day. So after you pay the cleaners, you know, maybe you have a maintenance guy, you still end up walking away with quite a bit of profit. And so that's what I started in 2019. December, I got my first unit. And then January, February, I got my next 2. So I got 3 units in the first 4 months or so of me doing this business. And then, of course, the pandemic hit and threw a couple curveballs in there.
Anyone in the hospitality tourism industry was probably affected by that.
Yeah.
More so than us accountants.
Brutal. I mean, it's so crazy that it was
overnight.
3 years ago.
Yeah.
And it feels like
yesterday.
It feels like both yesterday and a long time ago. Like it's oddly feels like both.
Right.
But it's overnight. One email went out and everything shut down.
Yeah.
Like the mayor jumps on TV. We're shutting down. All businesses closed. It's so surreal to even think about how that happened. Right. But yeah, I did some things to make it through that situation. I had somebody rent long term in one of my units. I had somebody rent for a month and a half to kind of get me through the first. One of them we did a lot of staycations. Like, a lot of local people were coming in to just do like a quick
get out of the house.
Yeah, right. A quick get out of the house. So we kind of changed the description on the listing to
pivoting.
Yeah, right. You got to pivot.
You have to. Entrepreneur Life 101.
Or go out of business.
You can't pivot, you're dead.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I was telling you yesterday this story, and it's like I was at max right there. My credit cards are maxed out. My savings is gone. I had dipped into my 401k to start my Airbnb business.
Yeah, you gotta protect the baby.
Exactly. Right. So it was definitely stressful, but like, that's one of the things, like, that's why I believe so much about the entrepreneurial journey being so much about solving problems, because they inevitably will happen and they'll threaten your business monthly sometimes.
The understatement of the year.
Exactly. And if you don't have the grit to just figure it out, like, it's really not for everyone. I mean, if you really think about it, it's not everyone can just constantly wake up and be ready to fight off whatever might happen that day. But it's also so rewarding.
Right.
Whenever you see the success and you see the milestones and you see the progression.
Yeah.
So,
and you teach this stuff too, right? You don't just have Airbnbs. Like, do you have a course or something?
Correct. Okay. Yeah. So actually, I've recently started. I've recently started with the posting my journey. I had so many people reach out to me on my personal page that were like, dude, how do you do this? Like, did I see you had 30 units now? Like, they're like, mind is blown, right? And so
going back to the high school reunion and being like, what's up?
Exactly. Yeah. So I was like, you know what? Let me just put something together, to show people how I did this. A lot of people are looking for something to add to their income every month.
Gig economy. Side hustle life.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, but the trick is that you want to do it right.
Yeah.
Right. Like, the days of Airbnb being a piece of cake are over. Yeah. And I was telling you yesterday, like, it's about 13 years old now, Airbnb, the company. And so all of the newness of people coming in and, not really knowing what they're doing, but still getting a lot of bookings, it's gone. Right. You have to put your A game forward. Yeah. Now, you got to come in with good pictures. You got to come in with a good description. You got to come in with a good pricing strategy, all those things. So I created a page and a course, 123 B&B is what it's called. And it just goes through, I'm going to be posting constantly on just tips, tricks, things that I do. And then also there'll be a link to the course itself if you want to do the whole thing. But yeah, follow, check it out, see some of the stuff that I'm posting and see if it's something that you think you can do. Yeah. And because I really do believe that anyone can do 1, 2, or 3 Airbnbs. That's why it's called that. Okay. Right? I think anyone can effectively manage 1, 2, or 3 units while maintaining their full-time job, being a family person, being a parent, whatever you're doing. I think you can still on the side manage those at least 3 units. Yeah. When you start doing more, that's when you really do have to put quite a bit more attention to it. Okay. But I think the 3 mark is very doable for anyone. That's
so good to know, because I feel like everybody's like, could I get into the Airbnb business? You know what I mean? Everybody's like, yeah, I want to have a property on the side or 5, you know? Like, it's like everyone that I think that has some sort of motivation to have some sort of wealth. Yeah. It's like having properties or rental business is always going to be kind of in the cards for that.
Absolutely. And it's great because it's like, with this arbitrage method, you can get in without necessarily having 20% down on a $300,000 place. Right. It's, you can get in with probably $5,000 and you've got a fully furnished place. You've paid your first month's rent and you're now cash flowing every month. Right. So it's just an easier barrier of entry to really start getting some extra money coming in every month. And you can keep that going for years. Like I'm 3.5 years in. Yeah. The original units that I started with are still going. Right. So it really is a fantastic way to jump into adding extra income, building wealth, tapping into that gig economy. Yeah. So
awesome.
Yeah.
And tell us about too, even like your entrepreneur journey or like things that you've learned being an entrepreneur that like people are like, okay, cool, but like I'm not doing Airbnbs, you know? Just talking to you, I was like, this guy is such a guy of like value and stories. So like, what's on your mind?
Yeah, I got you. Well, here's one thing that I'll say, and this is a lesson that I've learned like fairly recently, like even last year, and that is the growth journey is one that needs to be very intentional. Yeah. Right. You can't go where you don't know you need to go. Yeah. And I didn't really realize that I was stifling my growth until after moving here. So one of the reasons I moved to Miami was because I wanted to level up. Yeah. Fitness, money, all the areas there are, I wanted to level up and just become a better version of myself. And so after moving here, I see Lambos every day. I'm like, man, I need to make some more money. Yeah.
It is.
I see a yacht driving by every day. I'm like, it's a different yacht that was here yesterday. Just how
and it's not like $100,000 yacht. It's like $100 million yacht.
I saw the daughter of
the Walmart
one
girl.
Of the Walton's daughters.
Yeah, Sam Walton's. I think it was his granddaughter. Yeah. She was just here.
Her yacht pulled up $600 million. What?
It's just down the street. If
One
you want
block
to go look
from
at
my
it.
place.
Yeah,
and
I saw it too.
This stuff is mind blowing, Katey. Like we're from Ghana, Africa. Yeah. Like there's not even paved roads. Wow. The electricity doesn't work. Like there's the power. Like the toilet doesn't flush. Like and there's a yacht next door to where I live right now. It's mind blowing.
$600 million.
The journey. Yeah.
People will even see in a lifetime. Most people.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's nice to be in proximity with that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
So that was one of the reasons I moved down here. So back to entrepreneurship, the growth journey is one that needs to be intentional. Mm-hmm. So this happened to me last year. I didn't get into the business in order to become like a multimillionaire, right? I wanted to just pay my bills, be comfortable, and do something that I liked doing, which is how a lot of us entrepreneurs start, right? But then when the sales start coming in, you start getting the sense of, well, if I really wanted to, I could do something greater, right? But unless you decide, okay, I want to do this, you'll be stifling your own growth. Mm-hmm. And that decision point for me came in about October last year. I was like, you know what? I'm going to get to 50 units. When I decided that, that's when I knew that I needed to hire a quality control manager, somebody on the ground in Kansas City to be running and taking care of the units. I needed to hire full-time guest communication staff so that we could be able to manage communications for, more than the units that I had at that time. I needed to hire some more maintenance people that were on call for things that happened that go wrong, right? And a couple of other positions and different things that we needed to change. But until I assessed and said, okay, I want to get to 50 units, that change didn't happen. I was still doing guest communications myself. I was like, well, it's expensive to do it, so I don't want to, have to pay that money. Or I was like, well, I'll pay my cleaner this, but I won't get her to do this job because I don't want her to, I didn't want to promote her, right? But once you know that this is where you're going, you understand the steps you have to take. And so I was stifling my own growth, just cutting corners and trying to not really be the full business that it could be, just because I had made that decision. So I think it's one that a lot of entrepreneurs, they're on the journey. They're like, well, I don't want to be this media conglomerate or whatever, right? But if you don't, I guess that's fine, right? Yeah. But if you do, then make the decision, and the decisions that follow will come to mind. You'll know which direction to go. Yeah. So yeah, that's definitely one thing that I learned last year. Also the leadership piece. It's so difficult to be like a CEO. Nobody really says,
my friend.
It's difficult.
No one sets you up for the fact that you're gonna have to be like the parent, the therapist,
right,
the caretaker, the babysitter. Not only hey, is the work getting done? How are you doing today? That was the biggest struggle for me when I started to have a team. It was empathy and checking in on people isn't really my natural. I can do it, but it was instead of when they come in, I'm like, okay, here's my first 10 tasks for you today. Let's get to it. Yeah. I had to learn how are you today? Let's sit and spend 30 minutes just talking about how you're doing in your day. And, and once I started doing it, I actually enjoyed it. And I loved being able to really build that relationship with my assistant. But at first I had to really be intentional about, okay, you know what? I'm going to prioritize building a relationship with her first, because even though my natural is just, let's slide in with the to-do list and just be productive. Yeah. That's not going to create a long-lasting relationship, and that's not going to get her to feel like I care, right? And that was a huge shift for me in building a team. It's you have to be, how are you today? And then take time to sit there and actually hear what's going on with them. It's
true, because they are buying into your vision, sure, for the company, but at the end of the day, they're doing this job to make money. Right. So their motivations are different than yours. Yours is strictly, let's get this success. Let's do this, right?
Do the thing.
Theirs is to be happy when they go to work every day. Yeah. Right. And so if they don't feel that in the environment, it will definitely reflect in the work. There'll be some bickering amongst themselves. And then there'll also be they'll be less likely to go the extra mile for you, to do things that need to get done for you. It's definitely nurturing the relationship between you and your employee, and understanding what their motivations are and some of their, the family dynamics, things like that, is all part of it that, you just don't even know that you need to know until you have people looking at you with hey, what do we do in this situation? And I can solve, I can fix stuff, right? Yeah. Stuff happens. They call me. Oh my gosh, Francis, this is what happens every day. This is every
not once a month.
Every day. This is what happens. oh, Francis, the bed in unit 1712 broke, and we have a guest checking in at 3:00. And also, somehow, the key for unit 1803,
Got dropped in the ocean.
Yeah, the guest didn't return the key, so we don't know what to do about that. And then, the washer and dryer is not working in 1732, and this. And I'm like, okay, well, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna move this guest over here. We're gonna do that. We're gonna, that's what they call me for, right? But beyond that, they also want to know that, I care about them and things like that. So it's also funny whenever they like have disagreements and they'll like message you or they'll call you and be like, well, so-and-so is doing this way and I don't like it. And so now you have to become the mediator between the two. It's interesting working with people's social dynamics.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess one thing that I don't know how it'll pan out. It's like I'm thinking about people who have like larger organizations. Like think about 50, 100 employees, right? The culture permeates from the top. So the CEO sets the tone.
Everything rises and falls with leadership.
Right. How potent of a culture do you have to be for it to permeate from the top all the way down to the janitor in the, gosh, it's something that I aspire to. I can't wait till, we're running an organization that's got that kind of impact, but it's almost nerve-wracking, like thinking about being that kind of influence to that many people. Right. So, yeah.
I think sometimes too, when it comes to running a business, like what you envision at the beginning, the vision can change a lot. And it's like, how do I, get my staff on board with the changing vision? Like sometimes we bring them on and we have a plan and we're like, this is the vision. And then I'm like, actually, I have this new idea.
Yeah.
And that's cool at the beginning.
Right.
But then you're going to have another new idea. And you're going to have another new idea. And in corporate America, I remember it was so annoying when it was like the vision was constantly changing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And now that I run a business, I understand why the vision is constantly changing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, because I remember things from my job, exactly what you just said. I remember the same thing happening in my career. I'm like, well, we just onboarded this new system to track our sales and whatnot, this new CRM. Yeah. We just onboarded this one, and now we're switching to that one. Like, who's running this show? Yeah. Literally did the exact same thing. We had one property management software. I was like, this isn't robust enough. It's not doing the things we need it to do. We switched to a different one, right? It's kind of funny because it helps you understand how, people in leadership positions that you were growing up with, why things are happening the way that they're happening. But at the same time, I think that never forgetting like the why behind what you're doing is key. Yeah. Right. So we have this mission, and even though this opportunity is coming and it looks shiny, and this opportunity is coming and it looks shiny, and that one looks shiny, which ones contribute to the core mission? If we want to change the core mission, then that's fine too. Yeah. But unless it's in line, then we'll find ourselves treading water in too many different fields, and we won't be actually getting anywhere. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Oh, here's one distinction I do want to make, actually, is you'll hear me say Airbnb a lot, but that's just for communication reasons. Just because that it's easy to understand what I mean when I say Airbnb. But the truth is it's a short-term rental business, right? And that's because Airbnb is just one company, right? One platform. And if you're only on one platform, you're not going to make it very long, right? So you need to be on VRBO. Yeah. If you can get on Booking.com as well, that would be great too. But
are VRBO and Expedia the same company?
VRBO does populate to Expedia. Okay. So when you're on VRBO, your listing will be seen on Expedia, so you get that exposure too. Yeah. That's why it's a big part of the bookings that we generate. Yeah. And we also do a lot of generating direct bookings. So here's one thing that I'll say about growth when it applies to all facets of entrepreneurship is you got to understand how to insulate yourself. Because at first I was just on Airbnb and we were crushing 85% occupancy every month, 90% occupancy. We're pulling in good numbers, doing great. I say we because my team, but it's just me. It's just me, but yeah, I'd say me and my cleaners and my staff, right? So we're pulling in good numbers, we're doing great, right? But there's a slight dip in demand. Airbnb bust. You might have heard about it, right? or there's a pandemic, or, you know, an event that was supposed to come to town doesn't come to town. Things happen to where it fluctuates your demand. So you need to insulate yourself. We did that by creating a brand, YourKChost. You can now go to yourkchost.com and book any of our units direct off Airbnb.
Yeah.
Anyone that stays in any of our units, we collected their email, and now we send them emails a couple times a month. Hey, if you're coming back to Kansas City, make sure to book directly with YourKChost. 10% off if you book directly with us, right? And that's because you can't trust the platforms. The internet is the great equalizer.
Yeah.
It makes it to where everyone has an opportunity. Everyone can get in. Everyone can jump on Instagram and create a profile and start making content. But if your sole success is tied to just this, you're not really an entrepreneur. You're an Instagram person.
Yeah.
Right. So
you're just an influencer.
Right. You're just an influencer. So you need to be able to set yourself up to where you're insulated, because there will be a day when the Airbnb algorithm doesn't go in your favor and you do everything right, but for some reason you're not. It's suppressing your listing. You're not getting as many views as you were the month before for whatever reason. I mean, they have the right to do that, right? And so if you're not getting bookings from multiple places, if you don't have people coming repeat to your stay, if you don't have, you know, your own brand around it, you know, you're really not setting yourself up for success long term.
Yeah.
I have a friend who, because of a guest's complaint about his place, Airbnb shut down his account, and they reserve the right to do that. Right? They can do that. The same way Instagram can shut down your account.
Shadow ban you.
The same way
I've been shadow banned.
Facebook can delete your profile. They can do it. It's their company.
Yeah.
Right? So, it's a great platform. I built my whole career around it. It's a great way to get into business. It's a great way to be exposed to entrepreneurship. It's a great way to make money, but you don't want to be single, like in a single lane. You want to make sure you have multiple lanes coming your way. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Exactly. Yeah, that's a more elegant way to put it. Yeah. So
I think that's so good to know too, because it's like when you're getting into an industry that you really know nothing about, like, if you're just hopping on social media, right? You just pick a platform and go. Realizing social media changes every 2 years. Exactly. And if you don't have a YouTube or something that's, you know, kind of your backbone, and so that when social media changes, you still have your people. Or
if you're not collecting your people's information so that, or some way to personalize the experience, right? Yeah. Build the brand off platform so that if, God forbid, something happens with that, you can still move them somewhere else.
Yeah.
If your account gets shut down tomorrow, you can't communicate with them.
Wow.
You literally can't even tell them to go somewhere else because you're gone, right? So if you don't have their information, then you can't move them. So it's very important to try and do that as any kind of media influencer, because
if you live on the internet, which we all do.
We all do now.
If you have a business, you're probably on the internet.
Yeah. If you're not, you need to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's great though. I mean, I love it. Like, it's lowered the barrier to entry, right? And so many people are able to add value that they wouldn't have known how to or be able to add before. Like even me, like I wouldn't have, there's no way I could start a company, right? But now, because Airbnb is an app, I can.
Yeah.
Right. So it's amazing what the internet's done for us, but you still have to make sure you're an entrepreneur at heart. Like,
and also I think being around other entrepreneurs that, like, even, you know, you and I were new friends, but I always had in the back of my mind, like, I want to have rental properties. Now I have a go-to person, you know, and it's like being in circles with other people who are trying to do the same thing as you, but in a different industry. Game changer, right? Like, you want to have a person for everything. Like, I know if I want to do Amazon, I call this person. If I want to do Airbnb, I call this person. And as an entrepreneur, I think most entrepreneurs aspire at some point to have more than one source of income, right? If you wanted one source of income, you'd be W-2. You know, you'd be an employee. The fact that you want to be an entrepreneur says that you want more out of life, and you want to diversify, you know, and having all these things. So it's good just to have people in your pocket for when you're like, okay, I don't need this right now, but maybe in 5 years I do, or maybe in 10 years I do.
Yeah.
You know, and just surrounding yourself, being intentional about building relationships with people that are also entrepreneurs and also trying to build, because eventually, you know, you'll have a path that connects that you're like, actually, now I do want that person to, you know, I do want to take that course, or I do want to reach out to them.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So I preach that your business is you, right? We were talking about this yesterday a little bit. if you are unorganized, then your business will be unorganized.
Right.
If you are XYZ, your business will be that too, right? And so one good way to make sure that whenever those opportunities come to meet the right people and to get in those rooms and to get in those circles is to build up yourself, right? Get the right habits in place. Make sure that you're knowledgeable at least about your industry, so that whenever you do happen to run into someone at the gym who's knowledgeable in their industry, you can have a productive and scintillating conversation about, each of your respective fields, and then they have mutual respect, and next thing you know, you're friends, right? But if you're not that level of person yet, whenever you get there, you're not really they're not going to find value in you to be able to collaborate, right? So I'm huge on trying to build the right habits and trying to level up myself as much as possible, because I know that my business isn't going to be any better than I am.
Right.
It just is what it is.
Yeah.
I read a couple books on habits, and they pretty much boiled it down to everything's a habit.
Yeah.
Like your whole life, even how you feel in the morning. You're like the energy that you vibrate out every day is your nervous system's habitual vibration. Somebody else doesn't necessarily vibrate like that. Somebody else might feel a little bit different just walking around every day.
What's your favorite habit book?
Whew,
Did you read Atomic Habits?
I actually haven't read that one. That was like the most popular one, right? One called The Willpower Mind is one that impacted me a lot, because it talked about the habit cycle, and it made it very granular for me to understand. So
What is it? Trigger or
right? You got your cue.
Yeah.
Right. Your cue, your behavior, which what was the word that they used? It was like essentially the behavior and the reward.
Right.
Right. So unless you figure out what your cue is, you have no chance of changing your behavior.
Right.
Because that book actually postulated that you can't remove a habit. You can only replace it.
the habit. Yes.
Right?
I think it was The Power of Habit. I forget which one I read.
Yeah, I've read that one.
Okay.
Yeah. You can't remove it. You can only replace it, which is fine.
Yeah.
Right? Because so as long as you boil down your cue and you figure out where that mechanism happens to where, you go this way instead of that way, then you can rewrite it. Because the cue is probably going to stay the same. If it's stress for eating a candy bar, when stress hits, you're going to get stressed.
Yeah.
Right. So unless you switch it up.
You're an entrepreneur. You're going to get stressed.
Exactly. Every day you're going to get stressed. So unless you switch up the response and make it to where your body's, naturally doing that, then you really have no shot. So it's nice to understand that. I would challenge any entrepreneur to get granular about how to build habits, because it will be the difference between success and failure. Just a couple good habits can be your saving grace. Like even I used to not go to the gym that much. Right. And when I moved here, that was one of the reasons I moved here, was to get my fitness up. Yeah. Everyone's walking around in athleisure.
You can't be.
I'm like, Jiminy Christmas. Like I need to step my game up. So I built a gym habit, right? First, put myself in the environment. So then that way, that's one of the keys, is right, making sure that your environment's conducive to building the habit. Second key is the line of automaticity. That's what it's called. Like the line where it becomes easier for you to do it than to not do it, essentially. So getting that hump is probably the hardest part. But whenever people set up a gym habit, it's like, okay, I'm going to go to the gym for an hour every day, 5 days a week. From 0 to that is impossible. It's like you're not going to do it.
That lasted a whole 1 week.
Exactly. Yeah, you're not going to do it. So for an entire month, my only goal was go to the gym every day, every 5 days a week. Right? Go.
Get there.
There was a couple of days I literally walked in and turned around and walked back out.
But I got here.
Check. Right. Check. Now, more than likely, when you go, you'll do something.
Right.
And then you'll do an exercise, and then you'll see an exercise on YouTube, and you'll be like, maybe next time I go to the gym, I'll try that one. And then you'll meet someone that's like, oh, I'm doing this HIIT class on Wednesday. You should come. And next thing you know, you're building a community and a habit around being at the gym. Now I go 5 days a week. It's a piece of cake. Right. So, and the accountability. Right. So getting that first hump, and then understanding your cue. For me, my cue was stress to not go to the gym. I was like, oh man, I got so much to do tomorrow. I don't want to go. But then I flipped it. I was like, I got so much to do tomorrow. I need the energy from the gym. Let me go. Yeah. So I flipped that. And yeah, so it's very important to be able to work your habits as an entrepreneur so that they work in your favor versus against you.
I think something that really kind of piggybacks off of that too is like when it comes to habits, if you don't have the habit yet, have somebody else help you get the habit, right? Like if you hate going to the gym, get a fitness trainer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then you have an appointment, so you have to go to the gym.
Yeah, facts.
You know, until it's your natural habit, or at least a habit that you have the conviction enough to carry out all the time.
Right.
Bring in a coach. Bring in somebody where it's like, okay, now I have to go because ABC.
Yeah.
And then once you've done it with them for a while, maybe you don't have to keep them because the point of them was to build the habit. Now you have the habit, you don't need them
Exactly.
anymore.
Yeah. And when you do that, don't try to sign up with them 5 days a week.
Right.
You know, sign up with them once, twice, you know, get yourself in there first and then, you know, build upon that. It's not about how fast you get there. It's about making sure that you're not going backwards.
Going forwards.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's definitely key. One more point I wanted to mention was this going forward just reminded me of this. Whenever you're growing your business, it's never like linear. It's always like
somebody just said that to me yesterday.
It's like
somebody else. Yeah.
You're too big. Like we're big enough to where we need one assistant, but not big enough for two assistants. But if we don't hire two assistants, then we won't be able to grow to the level that we need to. Okay, so now we got two assistants, and we could use a full-time manager, but we're not really big enough to use a full-time manager yet. But if we don't get one, then we won't be able to get here. So it's never lines up. You're always like trying to predict what you'll be able to do and try to grow. Yes. So it's like it just kind of is like a pill you got to swallow. Like you don't necessarily know. Like when I was hiring all that staff in the fall, I was like, well, I have to get clients now. If I don't get clients, I just
can't make payroll.
Right. I just spent all this money.
Preaching to the choir, my friend.
Right. Yeah, you're an accountant, so
I get it. And there's times too, I think as an entrepreneur, people just like assume I'm going to be profitable. There are seasons where you are profitable and there are seasons where you are not.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think once we hit the point where we're profitable, sometimes we then have to hit another point of not being profitable in order to get to the next level.
Yeah.
You know, like, okay, I'm hitting 100K in gross sales, but if I want to hit 200K in gross sales, like you said, I have to hire somebody. But to hire somebody, that means I'm going to pay them and not be able to pay myself for a while. That's like entrepreneurship 101. Sometimes I can't pay myself.
Yeah, you pay yourself last.
Right? Yeah, you pay yourself last.
So
always
weird.
make payroll first. So now I'm not making any money. I'm not taking a salary, and I'm hiring these people even though they don't even have full-time work, but I'm paying them a full-time salary because I need them in order to have the capacity to scale.
I know.
And then now once we take on the new clients and we're hitting that 200,000 gross sales, okay, now I get a paycheck again.
Yeah.
It's not linear. It's like I'm making money, I'm not. I'm making money, I'm not.
Right.
But if you want to level up, that's just part of it.
It is what it is.
That's what you're signing up for.
Yeah.
Like, have you seen that picture on, I don't know, on social media or online or something? And it's like a 3-year-old just like did a bunch of scribbles. And then it was like, success looks like this.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I have seen that actually. And it's like what you think
like
it's going to look like a line. And then it actually looks like this.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty much the journey. Yeah.
You said you had a question for me and I'm very curious.
First off, how the heck did you travel all over the place? Because did you travel all over the place as a young person or in your adult life before you moved so much?
Both.
Both?
Is that you ringing or me ringing?
It's not me.
That's me ringing.
Is that you over there? Which one is that?
Oh, it is.
How many phones do you have? Is there one in your bedroom right now?
That's my iPad ringing.
Oh, your iPad.
My iPad's ringing. We're just going to let it ring.
So unprofessional.
I know.
I'm just kidding.
Well, the two phones and the computer are all recording. So
It's all
the
right.
only device that wasn't on Do Not Disturb, I guess, was the iPad.
It's all good.
How did I get to travel? So I grew up with a mom who, shout out to my mother, who was an incredible parent. But she always said, Katie, like, you're going to be a world-rounded citizen. Is that I'm like butchering.
Well-rounded citizen?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well-rounded world citizen.
Oh,
well-rounded world citizen.
nice.
Yeah. And one day you're going to have dinner with the president. So I'm going to prepare you for that.
No way.
She told me that my whole life.
Wow.
She sent me to etiquette school. Like, you're going to take these classes. You're going to know so that you'll be prepared when you have dinner with the president.
Huh.
My mom said that to me. And my mom was actually a politician when I was growing up. And so it was crazy because, like, she even sent me to politics summer camp.
Yeah.
Who goes to politics summer camp?
Right.
I, like, kicked and screamed, didn't want to go, ended up actually really liking it, but, like, I didn't really want to tell her that I liked it.
Right.
Because politics summer camp. Like,
Yeah.
you go and learn how to be...
Did you do student council at all?
I didn't.
No, okay.
I didn't. But I didn't really have any, like, I started going with her to, what do they call them? Like the call centers for political things.
Yeah.
Like when I was young,
When you're
I went
fundraising?
door to door. I got signatures.
Man.
I didn't do any of it by choice. My mother was
Campaigning
like,
out here.
yeah, I was campaigning literally.
Yeah.
And I've met 3 presidents, and yeah, I know. Thanks, Mom.
What?
I've been on stage with President Bush back in the day.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and my mom was like, you know, you're going to be prepared for when you meet the president.
Wow.
And then, fast forward, I was working at JCPenney headquarters. I was working as an assistant buyer in my
Very
younger
reputable
20s. Yeah. And they, I had signed up for this position to lead the volunteers in the home office in the nonprofit work. So basically anybody who worked for JCPenney who wanted to do nonprofit work, I helped set up the employees with different nonprofit projects so that we were, you know, giving back, right? Well, Laura Bush lives in Texas, and she was having a banquet. And so she invited JCPenney, who's also in Texas, that's where I lived, to come because we had donated some money or time to her foundation.
Yeah.
She had invited some people from JCP, and they had asked me to go in place of, to represent JCPenney.
Yeah.
To go to her dinner.
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting, you know, at the dinner table with Laura Bush, and I'm thinking, my mom prophesied this over me my whole life.
That's insane.
Like,
yeah.
You know, it was just wild. And it's not like, it's not because I'm a huge fan of the Bushes. I'm not here nor there.
Yeah.
But it was just like, it was just funny. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
My mom always told me when I was young, she said, when you get to high school, we're going to Europe. And my mom backpacked Europe when she was in her 20s.
With you?
No, when she was in her 20s.
When she was in 20s.
When she was single.
Yeah.
And in the 70s, my mom backpacked Europe.
Wow.
And so when I turned 14, and she took me to London and Paris, and that was like my first time to Europe. And then I came back and I said, I'm going to study in Italy. My parents were like, okay. So I did my study abroad in Italy. And then I did study abroad in Rwanda.
You were where? How old were you?
I was 19 when I did that.
You were, okay, first year of college.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I went to Europe for the first time in high school, and then lived in Italy in college, did a study abroad in Rwanda my senior year of college. And then it was really when I moved to Korea that when I finished my contract with my company in Korea, then I had saved a bunch of money. And so I was able to just travel for about a year and a half full time. So I've been in 52 countries.
52 countries?
Yeah.
That is impressive. I'm going to give you that is very impressive. And the amount of exposure to different ways of life, cultures, and I mean, I can only imagine how that's evolved you and changed you. And like, I guess I would have had to meet you before to know how that's changed you, but it's just wholly impressive. It's something that so many people want to do, be able to experience that, travel that. They don't know how, right? There's different ways, but the fact that you actually were able to pull that off. It's interesting that I guess whenever you were growing up, you had like a pretty stable childhood. I remember that moving around, I hated it. It gutted me. I was like, it honestly turned a lot of the negative, just a lot of the negative traits that I have, like negative self-talk and things like that, like those subconscious traits. That's where I got a lot of them from, just moving around so much and hating it. I mean, every time I got somewhere, made some friends, my parents were like, okay, let's go somewhere else. I'm like, Jimmy, Christmas. Can we stay here? Like, what's the problem? So it's interesting how like the same experience can affect people differently. As an adult, I kind of wish I would travel more, but I think I don't know, maybe I just been waiting to when I have a couple bags that I can just set a couple racks I can set underneath my mattress, and then I'm comfortable and I feel like I can just go and do whatever I want. I guess I could do that now maybe, but I
think there's just like learning what is your travel style, you know? When my mom and I first went to Asia, the first time I saw a Groupon. The first time I went to Asia. I saw a Groupon for a trip to Thailand, and I called my mom and I was like, do you want to go to Thailand? And she was like, I don't know, I hadn't really thought about it. All right. And I just bought it and booked us 2 tickets. Like, that was kind of it. And this was right after college, so 2013. This is like before Thailand was trendy. Like, I didn't know anyone who'd been to Thailand, you know? And I saw this Groupon, and my mom's just like up for adventure, you know? And so the first time I feel like you do something, if it seems a little overwhelming or scary, we did a tour. You know, they book the flight, they book the transportation, they book the hotels, they book the tours, they set up everything for you. You just get to show up and do nothing.
Right.
And then it's like, once you have a level of comfort with that,
Right.
then you can, you know, kind of go back and do it yourself.
Yeah.
But there's also so much financial benefit to doing it that way, because let's say you book a Groupon or buy a tour or some tour, right? You can book it 6 months or a year in advance. So you have all that time to pay the trip off. So when the trip actually comes, it doesn't cost you anything. Yeah. Rather than having to go on a trip and needing to like save up $3,000. You know what I mean? Having a year to invest in it, because a lot of these companies, they have payment plans. Yeah. You know, so that makes it a lot more digestible for people who are like, hey, I have to save for travel. It's hard to come up with that much cash. You know what I mean? Yeah. But then, what was the other thought I had? Oh, it's actually a lot cheaper sometimes to do those trips, like, because they include your flights, you know? And so it can be a really affordable way to travel as opposed to booking, because they have deals, right? They have deals with the hotels, they have deals with the airlines, like putting it in a package, and then it's like, you know up front what the cost is going to be. Whereas people are always like, how much did you spend? And I'm like, do I have to look at that number? Yeah, like, right. I mean, I have it. I'm an accountant. Every dime, every penny of my money is accounted for. Yeah. I don't use cash because I'm an accountant, and I like to know where all of my money goes. You know what I mean? Even my personal books.
So you're signing up for this digital dollar.
All reconciled.
You're ready.
It's all reconciled. But for people who don't do that, you know, like they want to know in advance how much a trip is, and it can be hard to gauge that. Whereas if you sign up with like a tour company or something, they'll give you a trip cost
package. Yeah. Okay. I it's on my list to tackle being more of a traveler. I think I've just it's been on the back burner, you know, building the business. Yeah. It's been on the back burner, but hey, you got to treat yourself sometimes, you know?
Treat yourself.
I guess maybe that's why I moved to a vacation destination. So I'm always on vacation.
Until I lived in Miami, I'd never lived anywhere where I'm like, I want to go home. I'd always just go on a trip and be like, this is a vacation.
Oh, where you want to go back to your
come home,
your place.
I may not. And my parents would be like, are you coming home? That was always like, they would.
Maybe.
I don't know. You know, your guess is as good as mine.
Yeah.
And my friends would always be like, Katey, where in the world are you? And are you coming back? Yeah. You know? And even with my ex, when I moved to Korea, he was like, so are you going to come back? And I was like, I don't know. Don't wait for me. Yeah. That was how that ended. Don't wait for me.
Katey, you're ruthless. Savage.
Shout out to whoever's going to be my husband. I've changed.
It's a lie. Yes. That's hilarious.
No, this time we're just going to go together.
Yes. Yeah.
You know? He was a homebody, so it just didn't really.
Yeah. It wasn't meant to
be. He was always supportive. You know, he'd be like, go do your thing. Go, I'll see you when you get back. Go. Yeah. You know, but.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have not found the one to go travel with yet. Maybe I'll find her here in Miami. You know anybody?
I do.
You do?
I know a lot of girls here in Miami.
But,
are you going to Voo Girl tonight?
Because
that's where they all are.
You did say Voo Girl's a spot. Yeah.
To all the men in Miami, if you want a girl who loves Jesus, go serve at Voo Girl tonight.
Go to Voo Girl.
Yeah.
Tonight. I mean,
the men serve and the girls attend. There will be about 3,000 girls there.
Yeah.
So you might find your person.
3,000. Might be too many to sift through.
Pick your poison.
Right. That's hilarious. Oh, man.
So to wrap up.
Yeah, go ahead.
What is your one thing for the people? Like if you had one thing that you could give them as like a piece of advice or something they could implement today, what would be your one thing?
So let's see. I think that whenever growing, the quicker you can release things, the better.
So good. Right?
As entrepreneurs, we always wear 12 hats.
Or 200.
Exactly. that's you kind of have to start that way.
Yeah.
Right. But the quicker you realize that you don't have to do everything, and that you can, in fact, get someone to do some of the things that you're not good at, the faster you'll grow, the less stressed you'll be, which I keep coming back to stress because that's a big one for me. Yeah. I've got anxiety, and this is just the stress is definitely something that I try to deal with. Yeah. So I challenge any entrepreneur to do this exercise. Every week that I have a item on my calendar that says delegate, just 30 minutes. And it's literally just time for me to sit down and figure out if there's things that I'm doing that somebody else could do.
Brilliant.
Right?
Yeah.
So I write down a list of all the things I'm doing. everything I do every day, things I did that week. I try to get as detailed as possible. And then I draw a line in the middle of the page, put an arrow over on items that I feel like could move over to the next, to somebody else. Mm-hmm. And then I write down what kind of person would have to be to fill that role. So if it's like, I don't know, do the pricing strategy on some of my units, then does that person need to be an engineer? Do they need to just be an admin? Do they need to be, like, what kind of qualifications would that person need to be, mm-hmm. right? So it'll just be assistant, me personal training, and that's what I write on that side. And so I just try to move as many things over as possible. And that's because I was burnt out, man. Like, I was doing everything, and it's so real. Like, people don't, it's a real thing. Yeah. You wake up, you don't have any energy, you got stuff to do, but you don't have the drive and the energy to do it. You're like, why isn't my body working for me? Like, it's working against me, yes. Right? You really got to get down to know what that is. And it comes and goes. Like, it does. You don't just get over it, I think. I think you're right. Like the whole first quarter of this year, I was like so in burnout. Mm-hmm. Like, it's something that you'll get over the hump, but then you'll come into another season and it happens again. Exactly. So you have to have strategies. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. No, you're absolutely right. Like, you do have to have strategies. And that's what, when I implemented my morning routine, that really helps me out with that. But, you do have to have strategies. And as long as you can, like, figure out and recognize it, that it's coming back, you can better know, like, what your triggers are. Mm-hmm. So I talked about, like, personal development and how, like, important it is, I think, for business. Yeah. One of the things that, after moving here, I did was do some coaching and some real introspective work. Like, I'm talking everything from hypnotherapy to, like, talking to my younger self to figure out some of the traumas, some mm-hmm. of the things that give you the habits that you have now. Yeah. 'Cause most of us don't understand that between 0 and 12 years old forms a lot of who you are right now. Yeah. People all think it's whenever you grew up or what you did in high school, things like that. Those childhood years, those subconscious imprints, all that stuff that your parents were whispering in the corner and you overheard them, but you don't know that you overheard them. Right. That imprint is what's guiding your current actions. Right. And so unless you do the work to really dive in and figure out what that is, you won't know what your triggers are and what's causing some of your behaviors. Mm-hmm. So I did some of that work. And, that's kind of how I was able to diagnose some of the things that lead to me getting stressed out. And that was being controlling, trying to do everything. And so that's when I picked up that exercise of, like, trying to get as many things off my plate as I can, just because it helps me feel better. Yeah. Right. Like, it's very important for you to be able to operate at max capacity, that you don't just feel overwhelmed and underwhelmed, because overwhelmed rather, because you're not going to be able to do each thing to the fullest. Yeah. Right. So that's probably the nugget that I'll say. Try to get as much stuff off your plate as quickly as possible. Yeah. So you're free to be creative on the things that you're actually good at. That last part is so fire. Like, if you're bogged down, you can't be creative. Mm-hmm. If you want to build a business, you need your creativity. Facts. So, like, there's been so many seasons, at least for me, where I'm like, I have so many ideas, but I'm so stressed and so burnt out that my business is stagnant. It can't move forward because I can't get into my creative. Right. And that's where the business building and the vision building mm-hmm. and all of that comes from. And if you're bogged down and you're too busy, the creative won't come and your business won't grow. Yeah. You have to create not just time for creativity, but mental space for creativity and emotional space for creativity. Absolutely. And you cannot get there when you're stressed, burnt out, or overtired, usually, at least in my experience. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And you can't express gratitude. You can't come from a place for gratitude. And when you don't do that, your team senses that. Yeah. And they feel like you're always angry at them. Yeah. Like, you're never like, oh my God, thanks so much for doing this. You went above and beyond. You're always like, well, why didn't you do this right? Why didn't you do that right? And it's because you yourself aren't coming from a place of, like, alignment and peace. Yeah. It's funny. I had a conversation with my mom in January. It was later. It was after I came back to Miami. So it was about February 30th or so. Mm. And she could hear this, like, calm in my voice and, like, just this. I was just happier. Yeah. Like, I answered the phone. I was like, hey, Mom, what are you doing? Hit her with some jokes. She's like, hey, Franny. So she has an accent. She's like, oh, hey, Junior. So you figured out your business, huh? She said, "You figured out your business, huh?"
Yeah.
I'm like, "Yeah, Mom, I figured it out." She's like, she could tell.
Yeah.
She just knew, because I talked to her, right? And she just knew, like, every time I talked to her, I just sound like I've got too much that I'm trying to do and handle. And whenever, the shift occurs, she's like, you obviously have figured out something that's changed the way that you are. And it's very important to be your best, or else, like I've said a million times already, your business won't be.
Yes.
Yeah.
1000%. Mm-hmm. I love it. Thanks so much for coming on. This has been so fun.
Absolutely. I hope there's some value in there for the folks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do it for the people.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell everyone, like, where they can find you? We'll put your stuff obviously in the description, but, like, how can they learn about you? Yeah.
123 B&B course on Instagram. That's where you'll find all of my Airbnb content. There'll be a link to my personal page there as well, and also a link to the course if you want to get that. But if you just want to see some stuff about Airbnb, some of the other entrepreneurial stuff I post, 123 B&B course, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, it'll all be the same content
all
there.
Platforms.
Yeah.
Love it.
All right.
Well, thanks everyone for tuning in to another episode of the Entrepreneur Life Podcast. And remember, today's a great day to start a business. Bye.